All right. So Killian has three questions for us. So we're going to do these one at a time. Um, Around which year did the Jews, sorry, I'm trying to make sense of this, uh, take the authority of stoning someone to death as was issued by the law of Moses?
So,
So I think it's asking around what year did did the Jews stone people to death per
it
the
says when
law?
did they take the assume the authority to do so as it was issued by law of Moses? So usually the term Jew as we know it is a term that doesn't really pop up in the Bible until more or less, let's say, after the return from the Babylonian exile. And the term Jew actually really means Judeans. So you might remember you had the tribe of the various tribes. One of them was Judah, of which the kingdom uh, of David, let's say his lineage came through, and they had a couple other tribes with them, and together, like the Benjamin, Levi, and Judea, they were in Judea and were the Jews. So I'm not sure if this question is asking about that group of people, the real Jews, in which case then we're talking about, what time period, what does it mean to assume the authority? Maybe it relates to the next question. Let's read that second question.
Around which year did the Romans take control of the land of the Palestine?
So those of
Okay.
you who know your history, oh, Tina, do you want to chime in?
I was just gonna say, as far as speaking to the time of Moses when he was around on Earth's history, I mean, because it went in the history of the nation of Israel is that it when Moses got the law from God, and there was the Ten Commandments, which is God's moral law, and then there was the law of Moses, which is spoken about later on, later on in the book of Exodus. And basically, um, the nation of Israel became a theocracy. So they were a religious um, government where God was the authority. And so God gave the authority through the law of Moses to, practice certain punishments,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe the time Moses was on this earth was, if I'm not mistaken, about 1300 BC. So, um, and that's,
Yeah, and it's hard to date because we don't
yeah.
even know what was the pharaoh at the time. Some people think it was Tutmosis the third. Others say Ramses the second. So,
Mhm,
yeah.
exactly. But, about 1500, 13 to 1500 years BC is about the time frame that people estimate, if that's
Mhm.
just the question as far as when that occurred. But did that last until today? No, we no longer live under a theocracy.
Great. And let's go back to the question, sir.
So the next question was, around what year did the Romans take control of the land of Palestine? So this is where I'm wondering if that first question is relating to this one. So let's talk a little bit about history, and Tina, feel free to chime in too. Um, History, as it's even recorded and predicted in the book of Daniel, talks about how you have, the Babylonian Empire that hauled off the Jews, and then you had replacing them the Medo-Persian, uh, uh, I want to say government. It wasn't a government; it was a kingdom that replaced them. And then following them came the Greeks. Alexander the Great went through, conquered all those people, and then he suddenly died. And Greece didn't hold on to a very consistent government. It broke apart into four parts, and one of those parts ruled over the area where Judah was. And then eventually the Romans come along, conquer Greece, but it wasn't like just overnight the Romans were there and took over in Judea. It was this long process, and you can look it up. Even Wikipedia will tell you that there wasn't a particular date when it happened. But there was an interesting event where there was a civil war going on between ruling parties in in Judea. The Judeans themselves were conflicting with each other. And then we have Pompey. Pompey the Great, a very famous Roman, who comes in, sweeps through that area. He besieges Jerusalem, and this is 63 BC.
Yeah.
And it seems like right after that time, then we have the Roman Empire really being well established in controlling, really putting a grip down on the Jewish people. So 63 BC. We actually, if we had to pick a date, I would go with that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
that's
not
right.
much before Jesus.
Yeah.
And then the next question, let's go there.
All right, and so the last part of this question is, around which year did Pilate mingle the blood with sacrifices? Luke 13:1.
So apparently this was referring to an event where a bunch of Galileans came to the temple, and they were all there with other people giving sacrifices at the altar at the temple. And Pilate had a bunch of guards sweep in, and all of these Judeans died horribly. And as you might recall, the Judeans weren't the most popular people amongst the Jews. They're sort of the fringe Jews and weren't well respected. And that's why, Jesus and his disciples, many of them were from Galilee, weren't taken seriously at times because they were Galileans. And someone then asked Jesus, with his death or the slayings, what did these people do to deserve that? Thinking they might be worse sinners. Well, this happens, it looks like around the last year of Jesus's ministry on earth. And again, there's no concrete dates. Everybody has some disagreement on when exactly Jesus was on. But I would say his last year of life, this probably is around between 30 and 31 AD. So when this event took place.
And I'm just going to read the reference there, Luke 13:1, just so that we have a little context. So Luke 13:1 says, at that time, so this is probably why they're asking about time, some people came and reported to him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices. And I'm going to read two. And he responded to them, do you think that these Galileans were more sinful than all the other Galileans because they suffered these things? And it continues on after that.
So, this takes place in Luke 13 that Wendy just read. And you don't have to flip too much further in Luke to then end up at Jesus's entrance into Jerusalem and his final week before he's crucified. So this is where I'd say it places it during Jesus's last year, around 31 AD.
So were they asking
when
it says at that time some people came and reported to him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices, is this saying that what they're reporting happened at that time, or did it happen some time prior and now they're bringing it to his attention?
It happened, and then it brought it to his attention. So Jesus was not at Jerusalem at that time. If you trace your steps back, before that he was at Jericho, where he runs into Zacchaeus, and then this was in before that. So people had to go a little bit of a distance to then bring this word to Jesus. But they had a mail system, they had ways of spreading news, so it probably wasn't too long before.
So we're talking maybe weeks or months. We're not talking decades,
or even potentially days. Yeah. So that's why I say it's probably safe to say this is around 31 AD.
Okay.